Welcome everyone to this week's edition of Level Up with Laiken. If you are looking for tangible strategies to scale up your practice and the mindset you're going to need to do it, please hit subscribe. I interview a new lawyer every week who will talk about the strategies that they have used to successfully scale up their practices. And this week we have Justin Heim of the law offices of Justin R. Heim.
That's correct.
I was advised yesterday that he is also known as J-Boo.
It's a term of endearment.
Term of endearment. So anyone who sees him, please feel free to call him J-Boo. Apparently it is a name that is up for the taking, public acknowledgement.
You may have the name if you wish to accept it.
Anyways, I'm going to let Justin tell his story because I have to say that is one of the craziest stories I've ever heard.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but you know what? It's kind of like when everyone thinks that their battles are the worst until you hear someone else's. Almost makes me a little ashamed of the stuff I complain about, but.
You know, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, but I think when you go through it, and I guess it'll make more sense for everybody watching, when you go through it, you don't think, for most of us, that it actually defines you, so you don't really look at it that way. You know, we were kind of talking on the phone. I've just had kind of tendency to keep moving forward. So I've never really looked back and said like, well, this is what's impacted me, or maybe this shouldn't have happened. It did, and it is what it is, and I just keep moving on.
But I think that your perspective is unique because I don't think that most people would respond to the things that have happened to you in the same way you did. Like some people would, at the very least, be tanked for a little while, and you just, like the stuff that you were, this isn't going to make sense until you tell your story. So please, for everyone.
Where would you like me to start?
Why you became a lawyer, because I think it starts there.
So we were kind of talking on the phone. I never wanted to be a lawyer, like I told you. My goal was not to be a lawyer, even though as a little kid, when they said, what do you want to do? And we had to make like a Microsoft Word or Paint graphic, I drew Supreme Court Justice. So there was always a little inkling of that there, but I had long since moved on. I was playing college football, nothing crazy, junior college level football at the time. And I had a friend who was supposed to be Marshawn Lynch, for anybody who knows him, his backup at Cal and his eventual replacement. But he got an 850 on the SAT, and I asked, what, did you misspell your name? What's going on there?
Did you get 800 points for like writing your name correctly?
Exactly. So, you know, he ended up at junior college with me and was just as phenomenal as he was. And he looked at me one day and said, you know, I want you to be my sports agent one day when I go to the NFL. And it was kind of a joke. You know, you never take anybody serious. But he had the potential. You actually probably should have made it all the way to the league. But then dots kind of started connecting in my head, which was, you know, I really always wanted to work in sports, like most every guy out there and every guy who goes to law school to work in sports. But I had some family ties, you know. My uncle, who is now, he's a scout in a baseball organization. He's actually a U.S. scouting director of a team I won't say. And he's a third generation scout. It's kind of a long family thing on his side. I went to him and said, if this is what I want to do, what are the steps I need to take? And he said, well, you know, agents aren't really lawyers, but that's the direction the players union wants it to go. So I would suggest you go to law school. Once you get there and you start making some headway, let's talk. And that kind of took me down that path. So I went to law school. I worked at an agency for a couple years, a really high profile agency. Well, it's not Scott Boras. It's kind of a small boutique competitor, same level of players, but not the size. And they asked me to focus on an area kind of practice, as we would think of it in law. And I dug into salary arbitration, kind of at their recommendation. I became a bit of a pro at Major League Baseball salary arbitration. I helped reset the market for one of their players, which is basically like if there's a settlement figure for a case type and everybody agrees this is how much that kind of case settles for, when you reset the market, it's when you get a higher number than it's ever been received for that kind of case type.
Does that create like a new baseline?
And it creates a new baseline. Okay. And that's what so the players union is always trying to move the market, and the teams are always trying to keep the market where it is. Otherwise, you know, cost of labor rises. Okay. I got really, really good at that. Won a national competition against like 40 or 50 law schools, including Harvard. Went straight up against Harvard and beat them.
Where did you go to law school?
Thomas Jefferson, down San Diego. So which is going through its own struggles right now. And I actually taught a salary arbitration class at Thomas Jefferson a couple months ago. And I still have some involvement with them and kind of their sports law policy center or whatever they call it. But after those 2 years and doing really well, I walked into that agency one day and I've never really gotten a reason. And they didn't owe me anything. They were very kind to me the entire time I was there. But they said, look, we've got nothing left to teach you. So have a nice life. And I said, wait a minute. You guys promised me that you would help me find work if I just did my end. And I did my end. And there was an opportunity with the Padres that was supposed to present itself and never even materialized into anything more than a let's get you into the park and do an interview, and it never happened. And I said, wow, I better learn how to become a lawyer because now I'm going into my 3rd year and I've got no real legal experience. Happened to be friends with a gentleman who I still keep in touch with, and JHQ members may know, Mr. Pratik Shah. And he was like, hey, dude, we need a new clerk. One of our guys just quit. You want to come help? And I went and started working at that firm, which he is now one of the 2 named partners of. It was a different firm at the time, but you know, Pratik is really taken to the distance.
He was a guest on the show.
Pratik is great.
I love Pratik.
He's wonderful. He's a funny guy. He's good-spirited, and he's good people.
Yeah.
So I got some exposure, though, doing employment law. We worked a CFRA claim, and I thought I wanted to do employment law, but this was 2012. And I got out of law school and there was no work. I mean, especially down in San Diego, it's such a tough market because everybody wants to be in San Diego, but the Great Camp Pendleton divide makes it so there's just not that much industry that there wasn't work. And I finally got a job in October 2012 working at this national firm based out of Manhattan. Their office in Southern California was in Mission Viejo, Ladera Ranch. And it was doing asbestos litigation. And as I told you at the time, I was like, all I know is asbestos is something in the walls, which is pretty much what the people who call me nowadays telling me their apartment has asbestos knows about it too. But
so did you take that job because it was the only?
It was the only option. It was what was out there. I didn't have a lot of choice. I think I was down to like $700. I needed to pay some bills, pay my rent, and keep moving forward. So that's what I did, and I took it. One thing about me though is, I was telling you, I'm just incredibly competitive. I think it's probably from growing up in a family that's extremely competitive and being an athlete my whole life. It was always, you do whatever it takes to win. And if you're not winning, you keep going until you win. And so regardless of the type of law I was doing, whether it was what I wanted or it was something I didn't want, I was gonna be good at it, even if it meant I had to put in everything I could to get where I wanted to be. And that's what I did. I spent 4 years at that firm.
Did you enjoy asbestos?
You know, I'm a nerd. I'm a total tech nerd. And what people who have done asbestos litigation can tell you is it's all engineering. I can tell you how power lines work. I had one of my clients who died because everybody has mesothelioma or lung cancer. They're dying. It's terminal. We had a gentleman, he built the first ever nuclear reactor on the USS Enterprise, so I won't get too into it. But I had all the DoD redacted records in front of me, and I was under strict orders not to talk about anything because I had the plans to build nuclear power plants for submarines and aircraft carriers. I also had another case where a gentleman built the Atlas missiles that sent, satellites up into space and whatnot.
Were these the victims?
Mm-hmm. Because they're the people who work on the product.
Okay.
And all asbestos litigation revolves around exposure. And so in order to prove liability, you have to start at proving exposure, which you have to be able to point at a manufacturer's product. And you can't do that without being able to prove their product was where your client says it was.
So it sounds to me like you went into a field you did not know, and because of your competitive nature and your desire to be good at it, even if you didn't love asbestos itself, you loved the process of learning and becoming great at it.
Yes.
Okay. So you're with that firm for?
4 years.
Okay.
By the end of it, like I was telling you, I was their lead associate for all depositions and trials across the country, along with a partner who's a good friend of mine still, Mr. Patrick Haynes. He's actually out in an auto trial right now, I believe in New York or New Jersey. And he really took me under his wing. He was the protege of Mark Lanier down in Austin. And just kind of bring a full circle in the worlds we know. And you get a lot of exposure on the national level, but I was taking 73 flights a year. My life basically consisted of, as I told you, I'd get up on a Sunday morning, I'd fly to, Casper, Wyoming, which took 3 connecting flights to get there. I would then drive 4 hours through a blizzard in the middle of the night because it took me so long to get to the place, to this small oil drilling rig town. I would prep a client for a deposition Monday and Tuesday, all day long, while managing 120 files, every file 20 to 60 defendants across 5-6 states. I would then sit through anywhere from a 16 to 20 hour deposition of spanning 2 to 3 days. The longest I'd ever been on was a 3-week deposition.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Every day?
Yeah, every day.
Woo.
8 hours a day, every day.
I'd throw myself out the window.
Yeah, well, the clients really feel like they want to throw themselves out the window. The problem is there's so many defendants, the judges allow the time because they each get a right to ask questions. And so
I gotta ask you, out
Sure.
of all the random towns you've been through, what was your favorite?
I love Chicago.
That is not a random town.
I know.
It's not Casper, Wyoming.
The Hampton Inn and I were best friends. I'm still living off of Southwest frequent flyer points to this day because I had so many of them. And it was a great experience for building skills and experience. I felt like I was paying my dues.
Okay.
But, you know, I got one day a week where I was at home, I was doing laundry, preparing to go out to the next place to either do a trial or deposition. Like I told you, I've done that.
How many trials have you done?
So I actually started more than a few and could never get anything to go to verdict because we would never get all the way there. We'd end up settling right at jury selection or in the middle of trial. I think in total between where I am now, getting something right up to jury selection or in or to verdict, somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 or 10.
Okay.
So I've probably prepped 40. And that's because they would get to the motion and eliminate stage, and it was that final defendant of 30 to 60 defendants that was kind of the linchpin, and they'd settle at the last minute and the case would be done.
Okay.
So
you did that for how long?
4 years. And by the end of it, I remember the final straw for me was, you know, we're talking about my health, even though people don't really realize it.
Go back to the day you got bar results.
Okay. So the day I got bar results, I had been sick for quite a while. I actually knew I took the bar twice. I barely missed passing, I think by 15 points or 25 points the first time. And I was struggling and I didn't pass because I didn't study at all for property because I couldn't sleep through the nights. I was waking up sweating constantly.
Oh, because you were sick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I couldn't do anything because I never felt right physically. And so I failed the property section because I didn't know any of those like weird lien creditor questions that you never learn in class, but they test on the MBE.
Right.
And I didn't pass, and then I kept getting sicker and sicker. And I started working, you know, at the firm. They basically hired me as an attorney and waiting to give me one more chance to pass the bar. So I was working 100 hours a week, and I'd go on lunch to a Starbucks down the street, and I would take practice tests.
How were you doing this while you were sick?
Probably made it worse. There was definitely weeks where I would sleep an hour or two under my desk on like this kind of carpeted concrete floor.
Yeah.
I'd go to the 24-hour fitness next door, shower, have my roommate who worked down the street bring me a change of clothes. Mm-hmm. I'd change and just start working some more. It got really bad though, and I got diagnosed with like bronchitis for the 6th time straight in 6 months. Mm-hmm. And it turned out I actually had a 9-centimeter tumor in my chest, and I had hundreds of tumors in my neck. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma.
No one figured out after getting diagnosed with bronchitis 6 times it might not be bronchitis.
There's something to be said about the microcap. At the time, I never really even thought about like med-mal claim. The real med-mal issue I had was I had a chest x-ray done in like February, and you could see the tumor. And the doctor never told me for 3 months.
What?
And so it wasn't until I got into an ENT who was like, I'm extremely concerned. So I need you to get an emergency CAT scan. I need emergency blood work. And within 3 days, which was a Friday, and it happened to be the day that bar results came out the second time, you know, he was sticking a long needle in my thyroid to tell me, doctors don't have good bedside manner. He said, well, look, I had a big mass growing out my neck. You can actually still see the cut right there.
Are you joking me?
He said, you know, because now this is an ENT, a different doctor, and, you know, he made things move. He said, well, I think you have Hodgkin's lymphoma, and if that's the case, you're going to be fine. But if not, you either have thyroid cancer, and it's incurable, and you'll have 6 to 8 months, or you have AIDS.
He said that?
And I said, oh, well, this is awful.
Oh, my gosh.
You had 2 or 3 days, but I remember that's when my parents started finally becoming very concerned, and my stepdad drove down, and we were driving back up to my mom's house in LA because she was like, "You just be home." And I was like, well, bar results come out. So I'm sitting in traffic, and somebody rear ends us on the freeway while we're on the way up to her. And then bar results came out, and I was like, oh crap, I passed. And so, and this is, I didn't tell her, I forgot to submit the bar exam on time. So I didn't submit it till the next day, 10 minutes after the deadline, because we had no Wi-Fi in our conference hall.
Okay.
And so I passed even getting the 10-point deduction.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that was an experience. It was different.
So you got diagnosed in the morning.
I got my official diagnosis in the morning, Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay, so we were not dealing with an incurable thyroid cancer.
No.
How long did you have to wonder if you had a death sentence in between the time the doctor told you what it could be and the time you got the diagnosis?
There was probably 2 or 3 days where I went through that kind of like, woe is me.
Woe is me. You didn't know if you were going to die. That's,
you don't.
my gosh.
But after those 2 or 3 days, I tell everybody, so like that was, not to now fast forward and jump, but I mean, I was working with people who were either terminal or were going to be terminal,
Okay.
and I was prepping them for deposition every day.
Okay.
And down the road, I was able to have these conversations, and I tell you this because it kind of brings it full circle. Everybody, or at least for the most part, people who are going through cancer, yeah, they have a moment and they say, oh my God, what is happening? But there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, I could go eat all the wheatgrass I want. I'm still going to die of cancer if I'm not doing what I need to do, which is the chemotherapy and what medicine allows you to do. So you just kind of move forward. I don't know how to say you accept it, but you have to accept it, and you generally do. And so when somebody comes to me and says, what do I do? I said, do you trust your doctor? Because you have to trust your doctor while you go through this. And if you do, all you can do is do what the doctor tells you. Don't do anything else. And after you come to that, which probably took me 2 or 3 days, I never thought of it as anything other than like, okay, I'm gonna go through this, and it is what it is. And I remember one of my best friends said he knew somebody else that had it, and they said it was like having mono for like 6 to 8 months.
Is that what it felt like?
Never had mono, so I don't know what monos felt like, but no, chemotherapy is pretty awful. And I was going through 8-hour infusions, and like they weren't like a tab, they were like bags and pushes, and they were long.
So you get diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in the morning.
Yeah.
And which is, I don't know, would you consider that one of the worst days of your life?
It wasn't a good one, yeah.
Then at 6 p.m.
Yeah, 5 or 6 or whatever the time the results come out, I was on the freeway.
You find out you passed the bar after taking it twice. Arguably one of the best days of your life.
No, I didn't care.
You didn't?
No, I didn't care at that point. It wasn't my concern anymore.
Because of your health.
Yeah, you know, you're not really thinking, I mean, I didn't want to take it again.
Right.
And so it was a relief to be like, I don't have to deal with that.
Okay,
But
now I can focus on this. So and I know you were just describing, you know, the process that you had to go through with the 8-hour infusions. Were you able to work during that time?
So
If you say yes, I'm walking out of here and I'm quitting life.
Well,
Because that's
I think I could have. But if you know me and kind of what we were talking about, I will just go 110 miles an hour no matter
on whatever
what.
the task is that you need to do.
And no matter what I'm going through, and no
Okay.
matter what I do to myself, no matter how much punishment I put on myself, I will do it.
Okay.
My doctor saw that right away and basically refused to let me to go to work. He said, no,
I'm glad he was looking out for you.
He said, this is a cancer we should be able to control. It used to be super aggressive, but it's actually one of the ones chemo reacts the best to.
Okay, good. So you did the 8-hour infusions. Was it infusion of?
So it's called ABVD. There's one portion of that called the Red Devil, if anybody watching ever looks it up. That is not a fun one.
Okay.
And when you pee red and you think, am I peeing blood? But you realize it's just the IV going through you. It's a thing, you know?
But what was the IV, like what was in it? Like was it?
ABVD they each stand for a different drug.
Okay.
So you go through 4 different drugs over a course of however long it does the push.
How long were you in that type of treatment where it took 8 hours?
So I think I got diagnosed like May 14th or 13th or whatever. I would do the infusions once every 2 weeks. I'd go into USC Keck Norris Hospital. And then I go back the next every 2 weeks, a lot of PET scans, and I did that for 6 months. I remember I finished about 10 days before Thanksgiving, and I was really excited because at that point I couldn't really eat anything without the smell. There's a smell you're incredibly sensitive to and a taste. So I actually one of the only people to probably put on weight during chemotherapy.
Okay.
You always lose weight and it's a problem. But the only thing I could find to mask the taste and smell was Del Taco chili cheese fries. So I was crushing Del Taco chili cheese fries. And I was
Can you eat it now?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so sick of it.
I probably shouldn't, but I absolutely could.
Okay.
And I finished treatment about 10 days before Thanksgiving, though. And so I was like, I'm going to be able to hold down a meal and actually have a proper meal.
This was what year?
2013.
2013. All right. You finish chemo, you finish your treatment right before Thanksgiving of 2013.
And I was supposed to take a number of months off per my doctor to recover, and I was bored. And I was tired of watching TV I didn't like. I'm never a big Breaking Bad fan, but I watched every season during that.
Okay.
And I went right back to work within 2 weeks. We lost half of our law firm, and I went from being in like a support role as I kind of eased back in with my health to I was right back to 100-hour weeks. And I just did what I had to do.
So you went back to the asbestos litigation firm. All right. And you're there for how long total?
4 years in total. So I spent another little over, right around 3 years there. And like you said, from that day on, because of kind of circumstances and the fact they realized I would do whatever it took to get things done, and we didn't frankly have a lot of people that were as committed as they should have been in my mind, I kind of assumed a prominent role of being their lead depot and trial attorney all across the country. So, yeah. And I realized I just couldn't do it anymore, though. It was that 4-year mark. My health was just like, anybody who goes through cancer will tell you there's always a white noise. Every cough, ache, or pain the rest of your life, you're going to wonder. The thing is that the noise is really loud at first.
Okay.
And as time goes, the volume turns down.
Let me ask you this, though, because with the number of hours that, and a lot of the people that will watch this show work hours like you do, especially as solo practitioners. And I am curious if this experience that you had did teach you to become more cognizant of your body and your health.
No.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, no, I never had a light bulb moment. There was no like, I appreciate life more. A lot of people do have that. It's not how I operate.
It didn't put things into perspective for you.
No.
So it was just an event on your timeline?
Yeah. And
Interesting.
it's part of why I don't normally talk about it. You know, we're talking about it today because, you know, you want to get some perspective on all of us, and I'm not afraid to talk about it, and I don't.
You just don't put any personal focus on it.
No, it's not what defines me, and I don't believe it has any definition of me. It's not who I am, and people always have this, oh, I'm so sorry, and they feel so bad. Like, why? I'm doing just fine. We just kind of
So the minute
move
your
forward.
health started getting back on track, you just went right back to the life you had before.
Yeah, and the one thing I think it did to me, not in a perspective thing, but just kind of subconsciously, is I live life in a little bit more of a condensed timeline.
Okay.
Whereas I'm always trying to do things faster than I need to be, and I'm so focused on achieving it right now.
Okay.
Because you don't really know what your timeline's like.
So you go back to work, but still, even in perfect health, at some point you realize that that lifestyle was probably not the best for you.
No, it wasn't. I mean, living on an airplane and in little hotels and eating bad food is terrible for your health. But I remember this one deposition. It was a really contentious deposition. I was in our Manhattan office, and I had at least 7 or 9 different national counsel for, I'm not exaggerating when I say General Electric, Ford Motor Company, CBS Westinghouse. Like, these are big players, and these are very distinguished attorneys. And I actually got along really well with defense counsel in a world where none of them got along well. I see defense counsel as somebody doing their job. I don't see them as my enemy. And we had these like, oh, they're the axis of evil and the bad guys. And that's stupid. They're people doing their job.
I don't think just by mere fact that you are a defense attorney.
Yeah.
I think but there are some people who are just inherently jerks, not because they're defense attorneys, just because they're jerks who became defense attorneys, and that's where they get
Sure. That's on both sides, though,
right. No,
I think.
100%.
So, but I didn't have any particular problem with anybody in the room, but it was one of my last depositions. I said, these guys are all like late 50s, early 60s. I'm looking around the room. I know all of them. Basically, every one of them's divorced. They kind of live this, I don't want to call it bachelor life. It was more like this, like, you got nothing around you. Mm-hmm. And I just realized it wasn't what I wanted. Okay. And I knew that I could only continue down that path for so much longer before that's who I would become, because nobody wants to be in your life if you're never there.
Right.
And so I chose to get out, and I started my own firm. It started off kind of rough. I thought I had kind of a good setup to segue out. I was going to of counsel for the firm while they found somebody to kind of fill my shoes, or did it by committee. And I had a buddy whose firm had just closed on him, and he said, well, I need a business partner. I do transactional work for restaurants and whatnot, and you do some personal injury litigation work. You can do the claims. It take a while to make us money, and I'll keep our lights on. Well, he was dating a girl on a Kardashian spinoff, and he mostly just wanted to be a LA party boy at that time without ever telling that to me. And it turned out restaurant owners were major weed grows that I had no clue he was going into. And he ended up doing nothing for a year. We're still cordial, which most people probably wouldn't be. He really didn't do anything for a year other than take all of the money I brought in, and didn't ever bill anything. So I think I ended up losing somewhere between, probably in like revenue, $100,000 to $200,000 off of a year being in business with this guy before I finally got rid of him. And it was going bad. And I had nothing to do with his side of the business, but it was just, I got to rid myself of this. I ended up kind of whittling down the small savings I had started with, and I, by chance and just, who knows how, I met Bob Simon. I was really good friends with Sevi and Grayson in law school for different reasons. Grayson was my surf intramural buddy. Sevi was a Civ Pro, they were a year behind me. Sevi was in the Civ Pro class I TA'd, and he was always the jokester, as he still is now from his J-Boo comment. And so we were all friends, and I was living in El Segundo at the time, and Grayson, being in the Redondo Hermosa area, said, hey dude, I haven't seen you in a while, I'm having a birthday lunch, come out. I was like, yeah, for sure. And the guy who sat down at this long table at a restaurant next to me was Bob Simon. And we were just kind of shooting the shit. And I would just gotten rid of my partner, and I was doing some work, kind of like barely fumbling along, keeping it going. And Bob was like, oh man, you got a ton of experience. I'd love to help. I think his words were, I'd love to help you win. And those guys, they go so far above and beyond for everybody. Like Bob and Brad, whether they realize it or not, were my lifeline, and I owe them the world. And so they had me start working on some cases with them, and they kind of did their setup where they offered to, help me fund those cases since I couldn't. I call them my sugar law firm once in a while, and it really got my start, and I got my feet back on the ground, and I kind of did what I just always do, which is keep moving forward. And that first year, again, was really, really a struggle. The second year, I started to kind of turn that like I'm breaking even. That third year was 2019, and I was starting to make some good money. And by 2020, things were starting to explode right up until COVID. And now that trials have reopened, I'm kind of back to where I was right before COVID happened. And so it's great. It's taken a lot of work. It's mostly just drive and a unwillingness to give up.
Okay.
Is how I'd characterize it. Like nothing will ever stop me because I don't know how to. It's not because I'm super strong or anything. I think it's because I'm stubborn.
But you do know when something's not working, because you had described a situation where you looked around a conference room table and you saw people who were, much further along in the area that you were currently practicing in, and you were able to identify, I don't want that life, right? So you knew it was time to shut down that road and take a detour. Then you end up in a partnership with somebody and you realize he's not pulling his weight.
Right.
So you end up saying, this isn't working. let me get out of this and go somewhere else. But before we really dig into that, why did you open your own firm rather than going to work for another firm?
Well, I mean, I didn't grow up with money. You know, we were really poor growing up, like all the cliches.
Okay.
And my parents ended up, they do very well now. They just didn't really make any money until I went to college, and I have a half brother and sister who are much younger, so their finances by necessity kind of had to go to them. So I worked full-time all the way through college and, you know, paid for all my undergrad, but it was law school I had to take out loans for. And I went to one of those law schools that's not a very well-renowned school, and I took loans out, and then I came out in a market crash where there was no jobs that could realistically pay those loans. So I think I had $190,000 in law school loans at like, one of them is like 8.25% interest.
Right.
And I just could not keep up with the interest payments. I mean, to this day, I've made something like $75,000 in payments on $190,000 in loans, and I owe $350,000.
Right.
So I said, well, financially, if I ever want to like have a life that I'm not tied to these loans, because like cancer doesn't stress me out, but money stresses me out. Yeah, that's the only thing that really stresses me out. So anybody who knows me knows I'm probably a little too conservative with money. You know, Brett and I have great conversations all the time about this, where he's like, just kind of push harder with it. You have it, push it. And it's that constant, what's the next shoe that's going to drop?
Because you lived in scarcity.
And I've always kind of had this like random, horrible, unexpected event happens one after the other.
Boy, have you ever.
So
my goodness.
I'm always waiting for that next shoe to drop, so
Okay.
I'm overly conservative. And it holds back my business a little bit, but it gives me a peace of
Let me ask you
mind.
this. Do you think that the fear of waiting for the other shoe to drop in some respect has caused the other shoe to drop?
Maybe.
Because they say that I'm not even going to quote it. I do a lot of reading and, you know, on this topic itself, and it has been said many, many times that what you fear is what you manifest. So I'm wondering if that thought process of always wondering, is it going to happen, is manifesting it such that it does happen. Meaning, if you were to follow Brett's advice, and if you were to do it against, I'm not going to call it your better judgment because it's a fear, right? Do it against this fear and invest in something that might push your business forward.
Sure.
I'm wondering if there is no other shoe to drop.
But that's the great unknown, right? Like
Yeah.
you're taking.
But isn't starting your own firm the great unknown?
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm very calculated in everything I do. So, I mean, down to these polos, which everybody jokes about, it's the only shirt I own. I wear these because when I worked in asbestos, you can't go into a mine worker's home in a suit and tie. And we understood that. Like, I can't connect with somebody. And so it's stuck. And, you know, I relate to people. Auto accident clients aren't super affluent ordinarily. Like, I relate to people much better. So everything is with a thought. And so when it comes to, you know, how far I'm willing to push financial risk, it's I'm willing to take a step. But if I know that step could set me back all the way, it's not always worth it to me.
But you've already been set back all the way.
Well, I disagree there. I don't think I have been set back all the way.
What I mean by that is not saying you hit rock bottom. I'm saying that when you went out on your own, right, which is a really unique experience.
Sure.
With a partner who wasn't carrying his weight, and you lost anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 in a year, like that's, I don't look at it, I look at it like failing forward, right? Like you learned something really valuable from
Sure.
that probably made you an even better firm owner. But you can't say that wasn't a setback in some
Oh, that
regard.
was a huge setback.
Yeah, you probably would have done better if you had not partnered with that person, but you wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
But because you had that experience, you were probably more educated and efficient when you did finally go out on your own.
Yes, I will agree with you there. I think that's also, to some degree, what you're getting at. It influences my willingness to take on certain things, though.
All
right. Whether that's for better or worse is up for, you don't know what the other end of that risk is. If I would have taken the risk, I could have completely gone backwards and be working for somebody else right now.
Sure. We all could have.
Or I could be doing much better and
Right.
have a much larger practice with more people working under me, which I'm not sure is totally what I want. Some degree of it is what I want.
Do you have a specific goal in mind?
Yeah.
And you don't have to share it if you're not comfortable.
No, I don't mind.
Okay.
I'm sharing everything else, so.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think I was telling Steve kind of what I was envisioning months back, Steve Rosen. And
I love that guy too.
yeah, Steve's great. He was the one, he's like, oh, so you kind of want what the Simons have. And I was like, well, I don't think I want it on the scale they have, but when I was in law school, I took a how to start and build your practice. And I said, okay.
You had a course like that? My gosh, I wish we had a course. They should have courses like that.
Well,
but anyways.
It was an okay course. I definitely wouldn't
digress.
say it prepared me,
Okay.
but they gave me some insights. And I said, okay, well, by year 5 at worst, I want to have my own shingle if it's not right away.
Okay.
By year, or maybe it was year 1, I was going to do it. By year 5, I would have like an attorney or some staff. And then my goal was by 10 years, I would have a couple of offices. And I really enjoy moving the chess pieces on the board and directing how they move, kind of like seeing all the angles and telling people where to go. But I don't want to be the person to push the piece anymore.
Okay.
And so what that really means is, you know, I'm almost 10 years into this
You want
now.
to create a plan where your firm can operate in your absence, which I think is the definition of success.
So, and that's my goal. I don't need to have, 50 lawyers. I'd love to have 2 or 3 offices. I'm a big believer in the small business communities. So like if you walk into my Seal Beach office, we have a Harbor surfboard.
Yeah.
Because Harbor is Seal Beach, and if I had a San Clemente office or an Encinitas or Carlsbad office.
Do you still have a Seal Beach office?
Yep.
Is it close to Nalene?
We're down the street from each other.
I just went to Nalene's office
We
not
are
that long ago.
literally a block
I'm in
away.
Long Beach, so I literally, it's 10 minutes away.
Yeah, so Nalene is above the Cold Stone and kind of shops. And if you look down the street, there's a giant clock tower.
Yeah.
I'm in the City Hall Annex building, which is a private office building.
Oh, okay. Very, very cool. Okay. So you have 3 locations right now?
No, we have the 1 location. My goal is to kind of spread.
Okay.
So the next step will probably go south.
Okay.
Because having gone to law school and college in San Diego, I want to go home.
All right. So you, when you left or when you dissolved the partnership and you went out completely on your own, was it just you?
Yeah.
You were true solo?
Yeah, I was operating a second bedroom. I am a very litigious person. No defense firm will ever bury me in paper because of what I come from. I mean, my first 4 years, I had a wall of meet and confer and summary judgment letters rounding my walls in my office every day.
All right.
So, I'm used to paper, and I definitely don't
How
paper
did
people.
you do it by yourself?
You just work nonstop.
All right.
I remember a motion to compel hearing. Veach Carlson attorney tried to say I was papering him to death, which I wasn't.
I've never heard that on the plaintiff's side.
No,
ever.
I laughed and I told the judge, yeah, Your Honor, me and my secretariat, my dog,
Yeah.
are really killing them.
Right.
Our one attorney and a dog, firm out of a home office are just giving them such a hard time.
So when you just started out, and it's good that you had that experience, right? And you obviously know how to power through fatigue.
Yes.
What was your first next step? Was it moving into an office building? Was it hiring? What was it?
So the first step was getting out of the home office. I'm a very social creature and I need interaction, and I could only walk the dog so many times and talk to the older guy named John who literally feeds the squirrels on our apartment complex property. So the next step was really getting out of there and moving into the Seal Beach office space.
Okay.
And that was great, and it's now me and an assistant. I recently tried to bring on an attorney, and then 2 days before he was supposed to start, he told me he took another job. That's this current post-COVID job hiring.
It is, yeah.
But it's really been get your feet on the ground, get rock solid. Financially, I probably maintain way too much money. I actually keep at least a year of overhead in an account at all times. Practically, I should do 6 months. It's actually something I've done ever since watching Bill Gates say once in the early 90s. He always tried to have a year of operating capital for Microsoft, and that's where it comes from.
So it's you and an assistant.
And soon to be an attorney.
And soon to be an attorney. And in the office, and you just got married. Congratulations.
I did, thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
so you
it.
don't have familial responsibility other than you and your wife, right? So you have the time and energy to devote entirely to it, which is a beautiful thing. And you want something where you are growing to have another attorney, and you want to build a practice that can sustain itself even in your absence.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. So when you go out on your own, I know you mentioned that Bob and Brad were your lifeline. How did you go about getting other cases, especially in an area of practice that you weren't the most familiar when you went into it, obviously?
You mean at all familiar?
At all, yeah. I was trying to be super diplomatic. Yeah, that's why I talked so I was like, what's the right word? What's the right word? How did you go about, learning personal injury? And is that all you do?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't do any business litigation or anything like that?
Nope.
Even though that was your entire expertise before?
Well, no, asbestos litigation is highly complex personal injury.
All right. Okay. So, but do you do those cases now?
No. So those cases, on average,
extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah, they'd be like $100,000 to $250,000 in cost to fund on average.
But it's very different when you're doing exclusively complex asbestos litigation to when you're doing premises liability and car accidents and, government liability, dog bites, blah, blah, blah. How do you go about learning those areas when they are very unrelated to asbestos, and that's where you spent so much of your time becoming an expert in?
So I'm a I don't want to say expert, but I'm a civil procedure nerd. And if you look at most of the cases in your Rudder Guide, they're all asbestos defendants. If you look at almost every one of them, they're all asbestos cases because asbestos is so litigious that all the fights come from that.
Okay.
And so what ends up happening is really the fundamentals of how to practice law, you're a pro at.
Okay.
What you're not a pro at is the nuances of the medicine.
Right.
I could tell you lung pathology, up, down, and sideways leaving that job.
But not spinal pathology. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So you learned that hands-on training.
Right. And dealing with insurance adjusters. There's no such thing as an insurance adjuster. I'm suing General Electric, and yes, they have, Berkshire Hathaway behind the scenes. But we're dealing with counsel and we're settling 150 cases at a time. We're not settling, with an insurance adjuster who took a 10-day course to become an adjuster and having to explain to them the law and them telling you you're wrong. This was a different world that I stepped into, and I was like, this is due.
Okay.
You also have no relationship on the regional level. Asbestos is a national litigation scene, so you're very involved at the AAJ level and meeting people like, Mark Lanier is a name from Texas. You get to know those names, and I don't personally have a relationship with Mark, so I don't want to seem like I do, but those are the circles you network in, and so I had to not only learn medicine, I had to finally get to know my colleagues that practice in Southern California. I never even knew what CALA was, except for Joe Barrett had the office door next to us, and we would joke in the hallways, and he's like, dude, you got to join CALA. I was like, what the hell is CALA? And he was the one who put me there.
Did JHQ help you with that?
With networking?
Yeah. With getting to know colleagues in the same industry.
I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't know Steve. Like, JHQ has helped me connect, because I hate driving to LA for the events.
All right.
So JHQ has allowed me the ability to really get to know everybody on a personal level and have a lot more of a connection with certain people I otherwise would not have.
I think that JHQ affords exactly what you just said. It's a more personal approach. And especially because there's more avenues for us to be able to communicate than I think there are in CALA.
Sure.
And I like CALA, and I'm super excited about CALA Vegas, mostly because it's
going too,
and I just want to get out and socialize and all of that good stuff. But first we've got Mardi Gras. Are you going to Mardi Gras?
Yep, we'll be speaking together, as you know, on a panel at Mardi Gras.
I just asked you that. Okay, all right. It's only Tuesday. I know I don't have a lot, and man, you've shared so much of yourself, and I appreciate your transparency.
As long as I'm not being Debbie Downer.
Yeah, you are not being, not at all. I mean, I think this is a true lesson, and you have dealt with more adversity and setbacks than most people do, and yet you mentioned you have the attitude of just push forward. Kevin Hart calls it the shoulder shrug. He said,
I've never heard of that.
I'm telling you, he calls it the shoulder shrug. He wrote a book, and I'm blanking on the name, but I swear it was one of the best books I ever read. And when I read it, I was expecting to laugh because I love his humor. Like, I'll watch any movie he's in. There was probably only one part of the book where I literally was laughing hysterically. The rest of it was incredibly serious. And what a lot of people don't know about is how much failure, because people want to think that he's an overnight success. He's not. It was a decade in the making. And he was saying, he's going through all of the failure he had in life. He's like, but I always had this attitude that when something bad happened to me, I lost a gig, I lost money. He wasn't familiar with taxes, and he got hit with a huge tax, and he was like, whoa, I had to pay taxes. Like, all of this stuff. Girlfriend broke up with him.
Yeah.
Baby mama and him broke up. Like, he's like, I always had this attitude of like, he's like, I just shrugged my shoulders and kept going.
That's all you can do. You have to treat it as like a learning experience.
Yeah. Well, it is, I wouldn't say it's all you can do, because people don't, right? Like, I'm the opposite. Something happens to me, I gotta process it, and I gotta process the hell out of it. I gotta extract whatever I'm supposed to learn from it. Like, I almost obsess with it to the exact opposite level that you do, right? So I really try to take it as a learning experience, and then for me, it's like a process of controlling my attitude towards it.
Sure.
And then I try to move forward. You and Kevin Hart, you're like, that happened. What's the next step? What's the way around it? And I think that is probably what has allowed you to get from where you were to where you are now. It's an amazing skill that you have. I wish I had more of it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Maybe I should practice doing more shoulder shrugging. I don't know. Definitely caused me to yell at my kids less if I did that. Like, I literally found something my daughter did this morning. I was like, oh, yeah, you know what? We're just gonna. She's not here right now. We're just gonna get through this, right?
Yeah, but managing a law firm and having kids, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't. You brought that up. I could not do it right now, and it's part of why I want to bring an attorney on. You know, my parents got divorced when I was 1. So I didn't really see my dad a lot the first few years, and he'd tell you that. He's a professional bodybuilder, like ESPN, magazine covers.
Wow.
And but that was his life. And so he wasn't really there because he was preoccupied, and when he wasn't, he worked. And so I always kind of said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. And I can't run a firm and manage kids. So the moms that do and the parents that do, like, I have mad respect for y'all.
We do it, or let me not say we. I don't want to speak for any other woman. I do it because I had no other choice.
Yeah.
Like, part of the reason why I opened my own firm was because it was the only way I was going to be a more present parent. One question I ask every guest I have on the show: young associate comes to you and says, hey, I want to start my own firm. What are the 3 tips that you give them?
Well, the first thing I tell them is basically get out there and introduce yourself to people.
Network.
Okay. You would be shocked at the amount of help that people are willing to give you freely. Like, they don't want anything. They just want to see people succeed. Like, this industry gets a bad rap from the public, but it's filled with a lot of really good people. And not everybody is, but there are so many more good people than there are bad people out there.
You can choose your people, though.
That's true, but you're going to find more good than bad ones, I feel like.
Okay.
And so get out there and shake hands, and you never know what hand you shook or person you met that is going to turn into an opportunity for you that's going to help you get through that early time, and it's going to be a great relationship, whether it results in some sort of financial gain or not.
Okay.
You can't look at everything as, am I getting financially something out of this? Did I build a relationship? Is this somebody I like and appreciate and just want to get to know? Let things happen organically, and if they happen, great. And if they don't, you have a good relationship and somebody who will look out for you because they care about you as a person. So start there. Be a good human being.
Not only that, but I think an ancillary benefit that I recently realized is when you create those relationships, you also create a lot of support. Meaning, like, there are a lot of people that I have met because of this show, you know, and I wouldn't call myself a confrontational person, but I've always had an idea of, like, I don't want to allow injustice to happen in front of me and not say anything. So if I was around a group of people and anyone tried to say something bad about the people that I have built relationships with in JHQ, I would not allow it.
Right.
So that's another, you know, for reputation only, like, get out there and let people know who you are and what you stand for.
Absolutely. And when you're in that process, say you're coming from a firm you worked at, like I did, don't burn bridges. It's real easy to...
Of course, yeah.
People do it, though, all the time. They seek some short-term gain.
Right.
And, you know, if you're one of those people, you're probably somebody that only sees the dollar. It's penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get anything out of it other than an enemy long-term and somebody who would have been there for you or maybe been able to help you out, or even if they never help you out, like, why do that?
Okay, so
walk out of every relationship and situation better than you entered it.
Sure. So tip number 1 is networking, building relationships. Tip number 2?
Tip number 2 is find what you can do if you're building a firm from scratch. You don't come from a lot of money. Find what you can do for free or on the cheap.
Okay.
Teach yourself opportunities. You asked a lot how I got cases. I taught myself SEO.
Okay.
SEO for me was a huge thing because, one, I had a lot of time. I didn't have a lot of cases and I had a lot of time. And people don't realize SEO is as simple as what we're doing here today. Because when you're creating content...
I think of mastering SEO, and I swear the thought alone overwhelms me.
Yeah, well, it can be because there's a lot of things that move and terms that are used, but it's not as complicated as you think.
Okay.
If you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about, then search engines are going to look at you and say, this is quality. And this is something we want to feature and we want to put out there.
Okay.
And the more of it you generate, the more you're going to get put out there, and that's free. If you have a website, you can write articles all day long, and they're going to be unique, and it's not something some company's written 100,000 times or 100,000 other people. They're like, this is the same crap we see every other day. Like, we're not going to feature this person.
So
that's
2.
free.
That's 2. What's
2? And then 3, build your reputation with your clients and always put them first. I really try to live a motto about it's not about us, it's about you, and that's really kind of a critique of the billboard lawyer model.
Yeah.
It's not. I see so many attorneys out there where it's all about them and their image, but they lose sight of like what's important and why we got into this. It's about your client, and this is brutal. I've had clients tell me like I'm like a drill sergeant. I'm very direct, but I tell them, look, better or worse, you're not my first, you're not going to be my last client. This is your only case though. So you got to do what's right for you, and you have to realize this is about you. I'm here to help you tell your story and get the results you want, so prioritize you. Always treat your clients right because they are going to be what builds that word of mouth business that just keeps driving people back to you. And they're the ones that leave the online reviews and say, this is a great attorney. And my single biggest case came to me because some guy said, dude, your Google reviews are great. And I have a very large 7-figure demand out on that case right now. And it should settle for a pretty significant 7-figure amount.
Okay.
Purely because I focus on the client and then invest in things in the community. Naileen and the Simons, the trial lawyer charities all invested like I did in the Seal Beach Little League. I'm not going to see any return on that. That is the single most well-funded by personal injury money Little League probably in the state. But
I've seen that over and over again, and I was thinking about it because my son is actually in Long Beach Little League, and I was looking at the sponsors, and I was like, there's only one estate planning attorney. There's no personal injury attorneys funding Long Beach Little League that I know of. But
so, understand, not every marketing opportunity is a dollar generator.
Right.
Sometimes it's a
good karma.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're doing things for the right reason.
Now, here's my last question.
Sure.
And I'm asking you this question because I know the answer is obvious, so I want you to give me something different.
Okay.
So, something about Justin Heim that not a lot of people know. And I know you already mentioned cancer, so I want to know something else about you that most people who deal with you professionally do not know.
Oh, wow. So that's hard for me because I feel like I put most of it out there. Everybody knows I'm kind of, I don't know.
Come on, you have a secret talent you have not talked about.
My secret talent. I really kill some Montel Jordan karaoke.
Okay.
I do that.
So can you sing?
Not on camera. That's for another day. You got to pay admission for that one.
I see this happening in Vegas.
Yeah, no, we'll probably try to refrain from that. So I'm an athlete. I'm an outdoor person. I'm an adrenaline junkie.
Okay.
Throw me out of a plane.
Have you done that?
Yeah. They were like, we're going to count down. I said, no, you're not. Just jump. Surprise me. I just remember not enjoying it, believe it or not. I thought I would love it.
Some people don't.
It wasn't like a fear or anything. It was more like I have a weird shaped bridge nose, so diving goggles, nothing, never fit me right.
Yeah.
And I was just pouring tears the entire time because of the wind, and my ears popped like probably 15 times. And I was like...
But I tell everyone you gotta try it once.
Oh, absolutely.
You've gotta try it once.
The squirrel suits is where it looks like it's at, though.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I want a squirrel suit.
I'm not gonna take up any more of your time because our hour's up, and I'm so grateful to have met. I know I've talked to you on Slack. I've never actually gotten to know you, so thank you for making the drive here and doing this in person. And for everyone watching, thank you so much. Oh, wait. how can people contact you if they have questions?
Oh, just email me. If you don't have my email, it's justin@heiminjurylaw.com. Heim is spelled just like Anaheim. Oh, there's something that nobody knows. Heim is home in German. So Anaheim means Anna's home.
Okay.
But everybody misspells my name constantly because they think there's an I after that E. Are you sure it's not an L or it's IE? So it's HEIM, injurylaw.com. Happy to answer or help you in any way I can. Just ask.
All right, fantastic. Everybody, thank you for watching this week's edition of Level Up with Laiken, sending you lots of love, joy, and success this week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.